So this is a great opportunity for us to really turn the corner. Face down, three. Just bust that. Just bust, we don't have to worry about it. Nicely done. Oh, my heart rate. I got my cardio going for the day. I just have to say that winning that hand was the best thing that's happened to me all day. You know what? You can't lose forever. And then the whole time WBC's over there not sweating it at all. He's like, heck, I'll take that action. I don't care. We got to double down. We're gonna win. Always positive that guy. You know what I mean? Really like that about him. Me? I'm so what? I was looking at W2 season and I was like, think we're gonna win something? Finally? He's there. Oh yeah, fire it in there. And so then seems like in the blink of an eye, what do we have? Do we ever look at our card? We have an 8. So we got a 19, I think so. And so then she flipped at 12, and then Bucks is 22. Yeah, it was 8-4. So yeah, then she got 7, and then she got 10. It's all coming back to me now. And it was about 60 seconds ago. But anyway, now we have, it feels like $12,000. I don't know if some of that money we came up with, but we're winning 3,000. Let's give it back to the money. Let's go. So the advantage is zero, right? Yes. All profit. Yes, I love that. Beautiful, sweet profit. So should we bet 1,000 a hand now? 1,000 a spin? Yeah. I don't think so. All right. Oh, we still have our side bet, right? Oh yeah. Back at it. Yeah, we can turn this 3,000 into mo. How do you like it? 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 Mo. Yeah. That's from like way before you were born. Does anyone know who's that song? How do you like it? How do you like it? Mo. Everything. You? I have no idea. It feels like kind of like the Bee Gees era type of revival. There, I'm sure somebody will know. Oh, I'm sure a lot of people will know. It's amazing. I mean, there's like nothing we could ask our audience where someone wouldn't give us the answer. You think they're throwing coins around about that sound word? Yeah. You know, I still read almost every comment. And it's like it's what I do when I'm sitting at home in bed. It's so fun and almost over universally nice pleasant comments. Thank you, everybody. So we have Manic pop up in the game for our game. Our quest to conquer gambling. What was it? Did you say today? Will gambling conquer us? Oh, wait a minute. That would have been good. Whole bell peppers, onion, fresh chicken, fresh everything.
Symptoms aren't under control, it may be time to talk to your doctor about the number one prescribed Entyvio. Entyvio has helped many people achieve long-term relief and remission. Doctors have been prescribing Entyvio for more than 10 years. Entyvio offers 2 maintenance options, including the Entyvio pen. Infusion and serious allergic reactions can happen during or after treatment. Entyvio may increase risk of infection, which can be serious. PML, a rare, potentially fatal brain infection, cannot be ruled out. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, sores, or are prone to infections. Liver problems can occur. Ask your healthcare provider about Entyvio. Relief, remission, for real.
I think we're doing the pink on pink hoodie. Is that true? Yeah. Fire, go. Where's the luck of the lives or whatnot? You gotta get over how they have our, let me get over how they have our last name up there. Yeah. Oh, another one. That's all they're gonna do right there. I mean, this reminds me of the first time we played motherfucker. Well, we need to get three, we only got two spins. A double trouble. There was a double dealio. Uh-oh. We got three on one spin before. Do it again. $630 the way I figure it. I enjoyed that. I went to no more than $20 all of a sudden. Yeah, there it is. 7,700. That's all winning. Yeah.
Well, hello there, Josh.
Yo, what's up? It's funny. We were just texting and now we're zooming.
I know it.
Oh,
I know it.
what's going on?
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I feel like I'm better than you probably are, but
Yeah, I've had my
things are
challenges today, that's for sure.
yeah, things are pretty good. I just got back from the gym. And I'm looking forward to this meeting. We missed you last time. Devin filled in admirably. That's not a
Yeah,
knock on Dev, but
Dev is the man.
Dev is the man, but so are you. I'm really glad. It's good to see you, just to see your face, even though we're not in person. It's just good to see you.
Well, we'll see each other soon, I hope.
Me too, man. Whenever we have time off, I feel like it's this grand stretch of time that's never gonna end, and it fills up. And now, just like I'm going in the studio this month, it's like all of a sudden everything happens all at once, especially post Christmas. It's like go, 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 everything's going nuts. But that's a good thing. Busy is good. But I hope we see each other before too long too. It's gonna be a busy summer. I suspect I'll be seeing you over the summer. I hope so.
Yeah,
We got word that Red Rock sold out. It's a huge deal for us.
that
I've
is
never
big.
played there. Yeah, it's a fucking huge deal for us, dude. Are you kidding me? We're all jumping around and celebrating like, holy shit. Because the fear is always, no matter how long we've done this, the fear is no one's going to come. That's always the fear. At least for like me and Travis. And we're like, oh my God, what if nobody comes? But yeah, Red Rock's huge deal, sold out with our friends in TBS. It's going to be a magical night.
I do a lot of events at the college that I teach at, and I always tell my boss before every event that I still feel like the 12-year-old middle school that throws a party and is afraid nobody's going to show up.
Oh, word. Oh, I
Yeah.
feel it every meeting as well.
Here I am, 56 years old, and I'm still feeling that way. So,
Yeah, that's one of the things you find as an adult, that like you're just still that same kid in a lot of ways.
yeah.
I'm always afraid at these meetings. That was what my big fear still is that no one will be here.
No, we
And
got
I just,
people here. We got,
yeah,
and actually, we have our guest here. I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share. I am going to start the recording.
yeah,
I didn't realize I was recording the whole time. All right, I'll have to do some editing. First I want to do is I want to welcome everybody to the meeting. Um, these meetings are made possible by Josh and the time that he takes to do these. The core team that is here always to monitor the chat, including Devin, who's like quick to the messages with links and other resources that we need. And then, of course, we're going to try to hold the meeting to an hour tonight, but the sharing and the support doesn't end here because we have a very active group on Discord that are here to provide assistance and help just whenever we can, whatever resources we can help unearth or provide. It's something that we want to do. We don't do a guest every. Before I do have one more disclaimer I have to do. We are recording the meeting. If you want to share and not be recorded, let me know before you share so that I can hit the pause button and not share your stuff because I suspect with this particular meeting, because we have a guest and who he is and what he does, I suspect we'll have a lot of material that we can use to help share some of these resources on social media. So, so that was that's just kind of an important thing to remind you that we are recording. And if you want to, if you don't mind being recorded and you still want to remain anonymous, just turn your camera off and change your screen name to something, generic. And there's that option there as well. So without any further delay, let me welcome into the meeting our guest tonight. Our guest is Justin Coates. Justin is a community engagement and partnership coordinator with the Department of Veteran Affairs in Michigan. And, when I first had a conversation with Justin about coming on and joining the meeting, which, by the way, he reached out to me, which is wonderful and beautiful, and I love that. He was talking about some of the resources that they have to help service personnel and families of service personnel that really it's some life-saving stuff. It's life-affirming stuff. And one of the things that really kind of pushed me over the edge of saying, yeah, we need to have you at this meeting is one of these, some of these resources that have been built for military and military families are actually available to everybody. And it's a really, really cool thing. And I'm not going to steal any of his thunder. I'm gonna start first. Josh, do you have anything to say before we get started? And then I'm gonna ask Justin to kind of clue us all in.
Nope. I think like a lot of people, I'm really excited. Welcome, Justin. Thank you so much for doing this. And I eagerly await what you have to say and share. And I look forward to learning because I'm sure I have a lot to learn. So that's usually the case.
All right, Justin, the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, first, I really appreciate you guys having me on. It's great to see some familiar faces. A lot of you I know from the cruise, and we've kind of built up that community over time. A little bit of background about me. I myself am an Army veteran. I served in the U.S. Army from 2008 to 2013. That was with 2 tours in Afghanistan, and got out of the military. And I was very fortunate to be the recipient of some excellent mental health services, some substance abuse services as well when I first got out, which really inspired me to get back into that field myself and to kind of give back. So I went to University of Michigan. I graduated from there, did my master's degree at University of Southern California with a specific emphasis in military social work. So I am a social worker. I did a lot of substance use therapy for the community at the county level, especially in Wayne County in the Detroit area. Started working at the VA a few years ago doing trauma readjustment therapy, especially trauma readjustment therapy when it's comorbid with substance use. As you guys, I'm sure everyone knows, there's a lot of overlap between that, a lot of overlap between trauma and substance use. Most recently, though, my most recent job is as a community engagement and partnership coordinator. The VA recognizes that there's a large segment of the veteran population that is never going to walk into a VA. Maybe they don't want to. Maybe they think there's some stigma. Maybe they think that's something for somebody else. I don't want to take up a space for one of my buddies. But there are organizations like Drumset Confessional that are tapped in to they're tapped into that population, right? I know myself being an Army vet, we used to listen to Coheed and Cambria every single day before every mission that we went on. We used to jam out to it. I know that I still have a lot of buddies that are who are still into the band, right? I have one of my buddies, he's actually stationed in Germany. He brought this up, Drumset Confessional up, apropos of nothing. Just like, hey, have you heard about this? I'm like, yeah, I've heard about it. Yeah, right, I sure have. And even if it wasn't for that, I think that the VA is really recognizing that everybody knows a veteran, everybody knows a service member, everyone knows a family member, right? And so my job, what I get paid to do, which is so much fun for me, right, is to go out and talk to folks like you guys here, folks that are kind of like out there in the trenches. You're talking to veterans, service members, family members, caretakers, providers, children, right? And just letting everyone out of the community know what kind of stuff we have available for veteran service members and their families, especially when it comes to suicide prevention. My job ultimately revolves around suicide prevention, especially when it comes to building community reintegration, ending veteran isolation, lethal mean safety, which I'm sure we're going to talk about here a little bit, right? Lethal mean safety, and just doing all the things we can to build protective factors for veteran service members and their families. Hopefully that wasn't shotgunning way too much information at everybody all at once.
No way, not at all. I'm excited that you're here. I think there's probably a lot of, I was running to get my notepad and my pen so I can write things down, which helps me to retain information. But
Sure.
We're all really excited that you're here, Justin. Thank you so much.
Justin, can you explain, when we were initially talking, you were telling me about the app, and there's some really, really cool things about the app. And I think it's something that it's such a resource, and I've never come across anything like this. And I think it'd be valuable for people to know about it.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and place this in the chat, a direct link for it.
Oh,
this
greatness.
is the VA Safety Plan app, right? Now, this was developed by the VA. However, it is not veteran or service member specific, right? This is something that can be, it's not like in its language, it's not like it's going to, tell you to put in your unit name or anything silly like that, right? This is something that can be utilized by anyone that is experiencing or has experienced suicidal thoughts, right? I'll give if you click on the button, you'll be able to read it for yourself. But the Cliff Notes is, right, it's an app that helps you identify personal coping strategies and sources of support, giving suicidal thoughts time to decrease and become more manageable. One thing when it comes to suicide prevention that we all have to bear in mind is that the human drive to live is sometimes a lot stronger than we can give it credit for, right? One thing that we've learned about suicide and those who die by suicide is that those suicidal crises are usually very brief, right? There is a window of danger, if you will. And making sure that someone who is in that window of danger has access to a safety plan, right, massively decreases the odds that they will complete suicide, right? So here's how this app could help you with that. If you're someone that's experienced depression, PTSD, any kind of traumatic experience, right? Having the safety plan so that you can get on your phone and review stuff you've already filled out before, the warning signs, right? Signs that you may be headed toward a crisis. Coping mechanisms, right? Ways that you yourself, unique to you and your experiences, can deal with, intrusive thinking, dealing with certain triggers for anxiety, depression, trauma, that sort of thing. The list goes on. I think a lot of folks will recognize this, even if you don't have a background necessarily in trauma, or if you've never necessarily worked with a suicide safety app or filled one out. A lot of this is going to have overlap when it comes to other behaviors like substance abuse, right? Being able to identify triggers, being able to identify coping mechanisms, numbers to call, right? Your sources of support. You have all of that stuff that's built into this completely free app. And I believe, let me see here. Yeah, you're able to, if you really want to get into it, right? You can access 988, which hopefully, I don't know if this is the right way to do this. Does anybody here not know about 988 at this point? Has anybody
explain it just in case? And also, by the way, I've made you a co-host, so you can share your screen if you like.
Okay, I will for sure.
Okay.
I always get scared though. I make sure I don't have anything stupid going on in the background. You know what I mean? But every time I share the screen when I'm presenting, I'm like, I hope nobody sees my weird fan fiction that I've got up in the background. You know what I mean? But yeah, so 988, that is the mental health crisis line, right? You press 988, you will be connected to someone if you are in some kind of a mental health crisis. If you're a veteran, you can press 988, you dial 988 and then press 1 to be connected to the veteran crisis line. you do have access to the crisis line through the app itself, which is a newer development. For a long time, the crisis line was like, 1-800, blah, 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 right? There was a bunch of numbers to remember. But now, everyone in the country has access to that. Again, the veteran-specific line or service member line is 988 press 1. But even if you're not necessarily like one big misconception is that you have to be, standing on the brink, so to speak, right? You're at the edge and you're about to jump, and that's the only time you can call. I myself, as a consumer of mental health, I've made use of the Veterans Crisis Line or the crisis line when I was having a panic attack. And I just, I was in my car, parked. I wasn't having any thoughts of suicide, but I really needed to talk to somebody. I couldn't get a hold of anybody else in my support group. I called 988. I talked to somebody for 10 minutes. Another concern, this is more something I've seen with veterans, right? A little bit of that military paranoia. It's like, oh, if I call the line, are they going to send somebody out in a van to like tranquilize me and take me off to the hospital? No, they're not going to do that, right? That's not going to happen. It's way too expensive. We don't spend that kind of money on healthcare in this country, all right? Unfortunately. No, but you can talk to someone. There's not going to be any shame, but you are going to be able to talk to someone who can help get you through the crisis. I see that Raz is commenting on the importance of the mental health plans. I like to be really interactive. I don't want to like call anybody that doesn't want to share necessarily, but Raz, if you wanted to like chime in, please go ahead. I'm
absolutely.
fine with that.
Hello. For those of you who haven't met me before, my name is Raz, and I am a peer educator, harm reductionist, and mental health advocate. I just shared a comment below the safety plan that Justin so gratefully shared with us about RAP plans, which are very similar to safety plans. RAP is a great program. It's a workbook that you can order online that is basically this in like hard paper form.
Absolutely. Yep.
RAP plans are great. Safety plans are great. I come from a family of veterans who were all alcoholics. So I'm very familiar with like the addiction cycle. I'm very familiar with what it looks like when your mental health starts to decline. I'm familiar with PTSD symptoms. Those are a lot of things that I deal with too. So I absolutely cannot like comment and positive about how good a safety plan is. For someone like me who has several mental health disorders, or someone who's going through an addiction cycle or something like that, a safety plan really saves your ass.
Yeah.
It covers all of the things that you forget in the moment when you are panicking and stressed and don't know what to do. And it's so good for helping you kind of find a stable ledge to start on. And then from there, kind of find your path towards a better place.
That's an excellent way to put it. And it's a great example. We like to use the term anchors of hope, right? Whenever we're talking about something as really as bleak as suicide, right? Or as addiction, right? There can be this overemphasis, even from well-meaning institutions, right? Like I'm sure a lot of you have maybe heard of like the 22 a day number for military veterans, like, 22 veterans a day, commit suicide, which we don't even use that language anymore, right? We don't say things like commit suicide because you commit a crime, right? Suicide, you die by suicide, right? Or even our language is becoming less stigmatizing, less stigmatizing. It's more accurate to the fact that it's usually tied to some kind of serious, depression, trauma, that sort of thing. But when it comes to I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought there because I wanted to make sure I was using the right language. We were talking about the importance of using the right language, and we were talking about the RAP plans. Yeah. So the RAP plans are another great example of another resource. And I think that's something where, folks who are involved with peer support, like yourself, Raz, I think that's just super important that folks who have been through that experience and, obviously, Josh, what you're doing here, right? Being able to say, like, these are the experiences I've had, being able to normalize that, right? Life affirming, that's what it was. See, I knew if I just kept talking, eventually I'd circle back around to it, right? There's this real sense and a real serious way in which, as much as we can focus on the problem, right? We can also overstate the problem to some extent or not give our anchors of hope enough due, right? in general, right, there are millions of years of evolution that keep that human mind wanting to keep going and to keep living, to keep on going, right? And those anchors of hope can be tremendously powerful things. And the app ultimately is a great way to kind of put all of those anchors of hope in one place. I see Janine. Hi, Janine. Thank you for chiming in and mentioning that 98 is in Canada as well. That is absolutely true. Thank you.
Janine.
Okay, I want to make sure.
Was I supposed to say something?
No, you didn't have it. You don't see you want to.
There was just a moment of silence and I panicked. Carry on. You're doing amazing. Love to see you.
Oh, like good to see you too. Thank you. I also no, I can't talk about the fanfic, unfortunately. But yeah, the idea of anchors of hope. So I can talk about that really quick too, right? When it comes to especially lethal means safety, and I think this is where there can be even more overlap with the mission of Drumset Confessional, right? One of the main things that the VA is really trying to educate people on is lethal means safety and access to lethal means, right? One of the most enduring myths around suicide is if someone really wants to die by suicide, they're going to die by suicide no matter what. That's not true. There is a ton of evidence that shows, as I mentioned earlier, that these crises are brief. They're time limited, right? And if you prevent someone from gaining access to lethal means by which they might complete suicide, they will not go on to complete suicide. There are some examples from the Israeli military, I want to say in like the 2000s, where it used to be service members would take their weapons home with them and then, go back out on patrol or whatever. They were able to reduce their suicide rate by like 46%. Simply by preventing anyone from doing that anymore. They remove that and instantly it's like, oh, okay, the person no longer has access to that. In the UK, this was a couple decades ago, I want to say like from the 40s moving into the 50s, when they changed they changed the laws around how like emissions worked. It used to be, right, that there was a large number of suicide deaths related to asphyxiation because of the gas lines that people had in their homes at the time. Once that changed, they noticed that there was a decline in the overall suicide rate, right? This is something that's true when it comes to stuff like prescription medication, right? Firearms, especially firearms, as I'm sure most folks can imagine, are the big one. They are the most lethal by far. So one of the things that the VA really tries to do when it comes to educating folks is when it comes to firearms, having firearms stored safely, having them locked, having them put away, that's just good gun safety to begin with, right? But then also, when it comes to medications, having a conversation with your pharmacist or your provider and saying, hey, rather than receive, a bottle of pills, right? Requesting them be dosed out in a specific fashion, right? A lot of pharmacies will be able to provide medication in like blister packs, right? And these might seem like minor inconveniences, right? But no matter what you're doing, you are building time and distance between either if it's yourself or someone else, you're building time and distance between the lethal means and the individual, right? And sometimes that extra 30 seconds that it takes to pop everything out of a blister pack, that extra 30 seconds could be the difference between life and death. The extra 30 seconds that it takes to, go unlock a weapon, right? That's been locked or, the ammo is stored separately, right? So building time and distance between the individual and the lethal means themselves, that alone can be life-saving. Hang on, sorry. Well, I was scrolling down and then I kind of lost track of where I was. Aaron, I'm sorry. Am I talking too much, man?
No, you're not talking too much, Justin. I do want to say to everybody in here, I know there's been a lot of interaction with the text comments, but if anybody has questions that they want to vocalize for Justin, we know we do the raise your hand. We just see a lot of familiar faces in here, so I assumed most people kind of know the protocol. And if anybody wants to share by all means, I think us sharing with each other is really like the lifeblood of this thing. And Justin, forgive me for not saying it before, but dude, thank you for your service sincerely. And thank you again for doing this. I really enjoy listening to you speak. You've got a really terrific energy about you. And I get the feeling this probably won't be the last time that you come here and speak. I know, I can tell you have a wealth of, I just have millions of thoughts bouncing around in my head for you. But if anybody out there has questions or wants to kind of break in and share something that pertains to anything that Justin's talking about or something that relates, please don't hesitate to. So yeah, I just wanted to get that in. But yeah, don't let me cut you off anymore, Justin. Please continue.
And we do have 2 hands up, so when
rock and roll,
we'll take questions when the times come. I promise I got you marked, and we're gonna get to them in a little bit.
Rock and roll.
Awesome. And anytime someone thanks me for my service, I always say it was a privilege to serve. It was a great opportunity to serve alongside some truly wonderful people, and I'm very blessed that in the position I'm in now, I get to continue working with people that want to help and want to be part of this kind of stuff. Okay. I think, Rob, was there anything else specific that you wanted me to cover or touch on?
One of the things that I wanted to see if you, obviously without revealing anybody's identification,
sure,
privacy, but maybe talk about some of the success stories you've seen in the role that you have.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'd love to do that. So one of the things that we've really noticed is the importance of community, right? And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir about that here of all places, right? One of the things we started in Michigan, so I'm in Wayne County, Michigan. I live in a town called Livonia, and we've started a Veterans Dungeons and Dragons table. And what we have found, I can't believe I get paid to do this, right? I'm getting taxpayer dollars to play Dungeons and Dragons. But one of the things that I did as a therapist for a while, I used to do like therapeutic board games, therapeutic Dungeons and Dragons. And once I left my position, once I stopped doing that, a lot of the veterans who, again, these are guys that are PTSD, depression, bipolar, a few schizoaffective disorders, and most are also comorbid. They're also struggling with an addiction of some kind, right? Substance use disorder. They found that even when they weren't doing they weren't doing clinically therapeutic Dungeons and Dragons, just getting together once a week was therapeutic in that colloquial sense, right? Like working out is therapeutic, playing music is therapeutic. And so they decided, like, well, what if we made it so that we could create an organization or a coalition where veterans are coming together and service members and their families, and we're playing tabletop board gaming in person or virtually, right? So I would say one of the best success stories are actually these guys where they've turned it into like, it is an actual organization where they have like a chairman and a vice chair, and they're working on getting incorporated as a nonprofit. They're raising money so that they can give, if there's somebody really wants to play, but they can't afford a D&D Beyond subscription or whatever. They're raising money to be able to just do like a scholarship, like here, or some service member says, hey, we don't have any of the D&D books at our local library. We'll buy them and we'll send them to you, right? We've had a lot of success with homeless veteran services, or unhoused veterans, excuse me. There's a few areas where not shelters, more like transitional housing, right? So, somebody is in a shelter, they get moved to transitional housing while they're waiting to get a housing voucher for more permanent stuff. A lot of times these guys are kind of stuck in limbo, with roommates for a couple of weeks, couple of months. They've actually been going, the Veterans Adventure League guys have been going and running D&D campaigns in these shelters, right? So that it's not just guys waiting around with nothing to do. No, you can learn to play the game. You can play. Here's how you can DM. Here's how you can run it yourself, right? So I would say that alone, I mean, at the end of the day, connection is life affirming, right? Connection is a powerful thing. A community is a powerful thing. And so that when I think, I'm also, I don't know if you can make it out. I'm drinking no, you can't see it. I have a glass that says world's okayest DM on it that I got. World's okayest DM. So yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest like success story that I can think of right now. And of course, all of these guys, they always talk about how learning that life affirming. I know I use that phrase a lot, but it's so important to me, right? One of them said he was talking about kind of like falling back in love with his passions and writing on the safety app, like all the reasons to live. And one of them was, he wrote, "I have to see how the adventure ends." And he was talking about Dungeons and Dragons, right? The campaign that he was playing. But he said, and then one day that just stopped being a metaphor and it started being very literal. I can't die. I have to see how the adventure ends. I have to see how this ends. I got to tear up. I could hear him saying it in my head. Like that was a profound moment for me when he said that. But yeah, that's the best success story that I could think of.
That is so beautifully put, and I love the idea of the value of falling back in love with your passions. I see that reflected in Josh's story. I've spent a lot of time talking with Josh about how the addiction robbed him of the things he was passionate about. I remember him, he's mentioned a couple of times the fact that when he was at his, kind of his deepest level of addiction, he didn't know the Mets were in the playoffs. And this is a guy that's got a Mets tattoo right on the center of his chest, But that guy not to know the Mets were in the playoffs really tells you the power of that disconnection and how important it is to reconnect.
Yeah.
So before I've got 3 hands up, and I want to get to everybody. Before I do that, Josh, do you have any questions for Justin?
Well, I'm curious, and it's super important that we get to everybody whose hand is raised, but I'm curious about like services, things that are offered for I don't mean to get like overly dark, but for the family members of those who did take their life. I think we might have a friend of mine in here. We lost someone who took their life, fairly recently, like 6 months ago. But, I think of this person often. She doesn't have to say anything. But I think of like how in the immediate aftermath, there's this like outpouring of support and love and like the whole town. We come from a small town. Everybody's there. But then as that kind of just by the very nature of it dwindles away, what type of services are out there for somebody who's like, or I even think of my neighbor up the road. We don't know each other well. I had written them a letter that I loved their Christmas lights, and then they dropped off a Christmas present. We kind of became friendly. They're up the road a bit. We're not like direct neighbors. Last year, or a year and a half ago, her son took his life, her 18-year-old son. And we're friends on Facebook, so I've gotten kind of like a front row seat. And I didn't even need to go into that story, but what services are available for people kind of absorbing this otherworldly hurt of losing someone, specifically to, I don't know the terminology, and I don't want to be rude.
No,
you know what?
You're fine. Yeah, no, you're spot on. There are definitely like grief and bereavement resources available for survivors, right? I think it might depend on that might be a question for like more local services. Unfortunately, as I'm thinking off the top of my head, I don't know right off the top of my head of like something that I could give that's kind of like 988 or the app. I will say that I can look and try to find some stuff, and maybe that's something you guys could like post. One of the great things about working for the feds is that if I don't have the answer to something, somebody does, right? Like federal government has answers somewhere. So maybe that's something that like I can get that resource linked and you guys can email it out.
100%.
And I'll say too, like I'm thinking about, I work in Michigan. In Michigan, for example, there are community mental health organizations that will have things like light walks, they call them, or out of darkness walks, where what they'll do is they will have a ceremony where, it might look like it's a summer evening with like paper lanterns or, with candles or whatever. And the idea is to remember the lights that we've lost, but also the lights that remain, right?
Yeah.
The idea that once again, connection is ultimately what is going to bring people together. And I think you're right too. Very often the focus can be on obviously, understandably, preventing suicide, right? And there is a need for those who survive, those who are left, right? Those who continue on. Beyond something like, there are 12-step groups I know that are focused around grief. Obviously, there's like individual counseling. I don't know if anyone here is familiar with the idea of a death cafe. Has anyone here heard of death cafes before? Yeah, I'm sorry, I see Jeanine. Yeah, death cafes are fascinating. There is a queer death cafe in the Detroit area, which is they're doing amazing work. But death cafes are really interesting because it's just folks coming together to talk about death in a safe setting. And I think one of the only rules is you have to bring cake, so you can have cake and talk about death.
Okay.
But yeah, so anything like that's going to put, the individual that's going through something, putting them in a room with other people willing to listen to them, right? That alone is tremendous for them.
Again, community, right?
Absolutely. Always.
All right.
Well, I appreciate that, Justin. I figured I'd ask you. I know you know more about this than I do, so I figured I would ask you. But okay, maybe Rob, let's get to some people that want to share, which I look forward to. I see Raz in there.
Yeah, in fact, Raz mentioned in the chat that has some resources for people, surviving family members and such. And
rock and roll.
I know that will be available in our. We should be able to put it in the resources section of the Discord page. So I just want to let everybody, just to remind everybody that our Discord is always there, and there's we almost have around the clock because nobody sleeps at the same time on this planet, and so there's always somebody hanging around there. So with that said, we're going to get to our first question, and we've got 3 hands up. We have Raz, Jeanine, and Alex. So we're going to start with Raz.
Hi, friends. It's me
Hello.
again. I'm mostly here to share some information and share kind of my story because this is a subject that's really close to my heart. For those of you who don't know me very well, some of you I've connected with outside of DSC, which is great. But I have several mental health conditions of my own. I have been through the psychiatric programs in my state. And everything Justin is talking about hits home. One of the things I did, I've been hospitalized 8 times for my mental health, which can sound terrifying, especially when you're in a bad place, because a lot of our system doesn't talk about what to expect for something like a psychiatric program. So you go into it blind and have no idea what to expect. I think it's really important. I'm going to talk fast because there's a couple things I want to talk about. One of the things I used to run when I was in psychiatric programs, which are generally a 5 to extended stay time, was D&D. That was a thing I ran for my fellow people in recovery. Other people in the program that I was in. And the scariest part of being in a psychiatric program or feeling suicidal or feeling alone is the lack of community and the lack of knowledge and the scariness of it. There's so much that feels scary when you don't know what to do and you don't know how to reach out and you don't know where to go or who can help you. So D&D, hearing that that's something that's happening with the veteran services is absolutely phenomenal because that's something that I did when I was in my psychiatric program. And it was a great way for us to bond, especially because a lot of the people who end up in psychiatric programs don't know what coping skills they have access to. And giving them different resources or options to explore is one of the best things you can do. So if any of you are struggling with your mental health or are in recovery from addiction or alcoholism, or you're struggling with anything, reach out to your community. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Asking for help is not a coward's move. It is one of the best things you can do. And then ask for resources. If you don't know what you can do to help yourself, ask your friends, ask your family, reach out to a therapist, And if you need help finding those resources, I'm in the Discord. Message me. I have access to so many mental health resources that I would love to share with anyone who needs them. As for surviving, being the survivor of like losing someone to suicide, this coming June will be the 7-year anniversary of my best friend's passing away. And after I lost Evan, my world was devastated for about 6 months, and then it took another 4 to 5 years before I could recover. So community is the best thing. You cannot have enough community. Reach out, make friends. If you need resources, ask for help. People want you here so much. You are so wanted. Other notes. Besides D&D, starting community nights in your local community is great. Finding queer resources is a really big one, especially for Veterans Affairs. There are a lot of people who struggle with mental health and being queer in service. So queer communities are great. Resources like DSC are great. Facebook groups, Discord chats, anything that lets you connect with another human being is probably the best thing you can do to help yourself. And you are allowed to ask for help, because that is one of the scariest things I've ever done. But it is such an important thing to do if you think you are struggling. And the people around you want you to survive, and the people around you want you to succeed. So don't be afraid to reach out to people. Making people feel seen and heard is one of the best things you can do. So don't be afraid to reach out to the people you see on your Facebook or your Discord who are also struggling. And that's really all I have to say, is that this is a big, close to home subject. And I'm really glad to see we're covering it.
Well, thank you, Raz. As always, I really look forward to every time you share. It's always insightful. I usually cry, and that's true this time as well. But it's real powerful, man. It's really powerful, and I really appreciate like 10 steps past appreciate. I look forward to your sharing, and I'm just really moved that we put together a community that you're a part of, you're a big part of, and that you take the time to come and share. I think you have a wealth of knowledge, and I think you can really help selfishly me and other people. I know there's a lot that I could learn from you. So thank you so much for sharing. Who's next, Rob?
All right. We're going to move on to the next one. And before I do, I want to recognize that somebody popped into the chat and mentioned that this is their first time. And we really love that. Looking for a safe space to share feelings around some of the things that they mentioned in their chat. And I would just like to reaffirm that this is a safe place to share things. So
absolutely,
and not only here, but on our Discord and other places. There's a lot of outlets for you. So the next hand up is Janine. Oop, I think I got to ask her to unmute. Oh,
Hi, I unmuted, and now there's a cat hair in my eye. Hi everyone. This is quite the topic. For me, I've lost someone that my sister's fiance. The day I very first met Josh, actually, the day was August 3rd, 2022. And meeting Coheed was a huge moment for me, because I had been struggling with not knowing that I had autism and was epileptic. And I had found out. It was a very big stepping stone for me to actually be like, fuck it, I'm meeting my heroes. Made some stupid remark about comparing Josh's calves that still haunts me to this day. And I got back, and my sister texted me saying that her fiance was missing, and he was found 10 days later, and he had decided suicide was his solution to his problems. And then I have a family member who actually, people don't think there's guns in Canada. There's a lot. There is a lot of guns. We love our guns in Canada. We just have
Hunting.
regulations and exactly like my uncle, like I grew up in a huge hunting family. My uncle had so many guns, but he refused to, like we would as kids be like, let's see your guns. And he was like, no, they kill things. And and so one of my family members, he actually had one of his hunting rifles yanked out of his mouth. And in Canada, because everything is like you register your guns, there's a whole bunch of different regulations than there are in the States. His guns were taken away. He lost his license. And he had to actually have like a mental health check to prove that like he was in a fit state in order to get them back.
The states are getting better at that, slowly but surely.
And that was
getting
my
better
question.
At it.
That was my question, because I do have quite a few friends in the States. Sorry, this cat hair is driving me crazy. I do have quite a few friends in the States, and just like how is that situation handled? Because in Canada it was a sigh of relief, because this person, it was my brother, and my dad, who unfortunately we lost to addictions a couple years ago, was the one who saved him. And now my brother is sober. He owns his own business. He's like completely changed his life around. He's someone who is a success story, and we're very excited to see that that's a very different person from, oh God, when was that? That was pre-COVID. So yeah, how is that in the States? Like, what is something that someone can do to navigate someone who maybe is in a state that doesn't have the same kind of gun regulations, and there is that thought of like they're going through something and they have access to something that's a little bit too permanent?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's one of those things where that is actually a source of a lot of work that my fellow CEPCs and I are doing. One of the main things is trying to create turn-in, like temporary storage solutions. So, you can go to in Michigan, I know there's actually like a church in Detroit where if you go to that church and say, please take my firearms from me, they will hold them for no more and no less than 3 days, right? In order to remove liability for themselves, right? Because what they don't want to have is they take it and then someone gets it back and then they use it, right? And so their way of saying, hey, we are not the ones making any kind of qualification on whether or not you're actually ready. They just say no more or no less than 3 days, right? After 3 days, we melt them down with scrap, and it's gone, right? So there are local turn-in options like that. A lot of times, unfortunately, at least this is Michigan, right? And there's 50 states, and they can all have very different laws. A lot of times, there needs to be a court order, which can be very difficult to get. I can tell you this right now. I'll disclose a little bit about myself. Part of the reason why I became involved in mental health was, I was suicidal after my second deployment. And I went into the VA hospital here in Detroit. I was there for a while. I was out for about 12 hours and realized I was still very, very suicidal and I needed to go right back in. No one ever asked me about firearm ownership. Never came up, right? I had a weapon at my house. I did have one. Luckily, and this is why these communities are important, right? My dad is a veteran. That was the first thing my dad asked me about was, hey, where is it? I'm going to go take that now, right? So I would say that, if you're in the States and you are worried about someone, right, this gets into having the conversation around suicide to begin with, right? One of the things that we want to do when it comes to talking to a loved one or a friend about suicide is to be direct. Do not beat around the bush, right? Another myth about suicide is that if you bring it up to someone, you're going to increase the odds of them doing it. That's not true. That's not true, right? If you're worried about someone, ask them directly. Are you thinking about completing suicide? If you don't even have to be that far, are you thinking about killing yourself, right? Be completely upfront, right? If they say, yeah, and you know that they have a firearm, right? Your own comfort and safety matters, right? Never, ever, under any circumstances, talk to someone that has a weapon on them, that has a loaded weapon, right? Even if, you think, no, they're not going to use it on me or what have you. Even myself as a crisis counselor, like, there have been very few times where this has happened, but if I'm talking to someone that is, going through a crisis and they are armed, I'm leaving the situation. I can try and help remotely, right? So take care of yourselves. Don't feel like if you come across this kind of scenario that you need to like spring into action. You shouldn't. You should leave, right? But if they're willing, and this is a loved one, they're willing to talk to you, see how far they're willing to go. Are they willing to just lock the weapon up? Are they willing to give it to you? Someone that knows firearms will know how to take them apart. Ask them for the bolt carrier group, right? Ask them for the bolt, like give me a key part of this weapon and I'll hang on to it for you until you're feeling a little bit better. Unfortunately, that's the best answer I can give just because it's such a hodgepodge of different rules here in the States. But there is a lot of work going into destigmatizing it and letting people know it's okay. Like, no one is going to take your guns if you say, hey, I really shouldn't have these in my house because I'm super depressed, right? Like, you're going to be okay. So yeah, a lot of work being done in that direction.
Thank you for answering that.
Thank you
And
so much.
yeah.
All right. So we have two more hands up, and it's probably going to take us to the end. One of the hands is from somebody I don't think we've heard from before, so I'm really excited to get that. First up is Alex.
Hey everyone, can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we
Yes,
got
sir.
you.
Yep.
Okay, sorry, I'm on a hands-free device right now, so I'm missing all of your beautiful faces. I just wanted
You're not missing mine.
I just wanted to really quickly jump in and just adjust and say thank you for the work that you're doing. I'm currently active duty. I've served in the Army for the past 14 years, and a lot of the things that you're talking about are absolutely true. I think amongst service members specifically, we minimize a lot of the things that we experience, and we kind of compartmentalize things and say, well, yeah, I went through this, X, Y, Z, but somebody has it worse, so I don't need that resource, like, I'm okay, so it's really nice to see, like, these other options that don't get talked about while in the service, to know that, hey, on the backside of my career, there are other options and things out there. And a thank you to, Josh and Rob and the entire core team. I had gone to individual therapy and counseling and things like that for my traumas and, my abuse issues with substances and things like that. But even there, I noticed that I really minimized a lot of the stuff, and I didn't want to fully open myself up, for fear that it could impact my career negatively somehow.
Absolutely. Yep.
They tell us all the time, like, oh, go get help, it won't impact you. But we all know that it still kind of does. It can prevent you from certain opportunities while you're in service. And so that's a big drawback, and I think that's one of the things that keeps people from seeking the help that they need. And so, I just wanted to thank the entire DSC team as well, because I've shared some of my personal story in earlier meetings, and that was probably the first time that I was able to do that I felt comfortable enough to do that. And so just to, everybody involved, really, really thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything you guys are doing, because a lot of people just don't know the resources that are out there, or it feels uncomfortable, it may feel unsafe, and you guys have all done such a fantastic job of creating a safe environment, a comfortable environment where people feel welcome, they feel heard, and we've talked about it a lot. Community, I think that's such a massive piece. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody. That's all I had. I know we're getting close to time, so thanks everybody.
Thank you, Alex.
For sure. Real quick, Alex, what's your MOS?
I'm a 19 Delta.
Oh, my man.
Yeah.
I won't hold it against you. I was an 11 Bravo.
That's okay. Hey, there's got to be a bullet catcher. I'll tell you where the bad guys are. It's all fine.
Thanks for chiming in, man. It's always good to hear from active duty.
Little military rivalry going on here.
Just a little.
Yeah.
By the way, what is MOS? I just got to know.
Military occupational specialty.
Okay.
Yeah, it's what your job is in the military. So he's a cavalryman. I was an infantryman, but I was an infantryman attached to a cavalry unit. So I do have a Stetson somewhere.
Hey, there we go.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So the next, and by the way, and I would like to say to Alex, thank you as well for your service.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always appreciative of people that can do jobs that I could not do, for sure. The next hand up is Leah. Is it Leah or Leah? I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yep.
Oh, we can't now.
Oh, I'm going to ask you to unmute, see if that works.
Unmute.
There you go. You
Unmute.
did.
There we are. I guess I just stay on this page.
Yep.
Yep, it's my first time. Yeah, it's Leah. You did it right. It would be my first time talking. I don't want to take all your time. I do want to first and foremost thank Justin for his service and also for his service against, like, not against, but for suicide prevention, and it really means a lot to me. Also, everyone else who's spoken has helped a lot, so it's kind of hard to follow that. But I want to follow with the thank yous as well. And Josh, I have to thank you a lot. I haven't spoken yet, but I've been to quite a few meetings, and it's helped me. It's helped me a lot. And I really appreciate that you've done this, because I myself was also scared to speak up at meetings when I used to do meetings.
Sure.
I'll do a quick rundown. I became addicted to pills because they were good for migraines, so my mom said. But became addicted at 13. And then my dad passed away when I was 16, so that cancer. But leading up to today, I've made my way and everything. But recently in October, my best friend passed away, and I'm pretty sure it was suicide, if not the alcohol that took him. He had multiple seizures and other health issues, but I'm pretty sure that's what did it. Been wanting to speak about it, but I can delve more into it next meeting for sure. But this is the first time I've had the galls to even open up about it. There's a reason I think my video is not on, but depression is really kicking my ass, and you speaking up on suicide really is a blessing for people, because yeah, I called the hotlines. I've been there, and I still go there occasionally. And my good friend that passed away, he tried it really hard, and sometimes it would be a hit or miss for him on the hotlines, but I know there's other resources. I tried to help him, but it's hard. I know it's hard when the other person isn't ready for the help. So I do feel that guilt, but I know that yeah, it's tricky. I know you had lost your best friend, Josh, and hearing you speak about him after the loss, I'm so sorry for that. It helped me a lot listening to you speak, and it's not an easy subject to speak on, watching friends die like that, especially when there's drugs, alcohol, things that can be prevented involved. But it's been a heavy trip. I do seek I have a psychiatrist at the moment, but unfortunately, my insurance only covers so much of a therapist. So waiting on that. I do want to know resources. I'm pretty sure a lot of them are mentioned, but if anybody does not have access to help with funding, is there possibly any program that does it for free?
Terrific
Basically.
question. What terrific question.
Yeah, so you're talking specifically. I just want to make sure I understand. And first, let me say, I think you did an excellent job conveying how difficult it is to even talk about this sometimes.
Yeah, it's tricky.
And being a survivor, it just I'm allowed to curse. Can I curse? Am I allowed?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think being in the military, I have tattoos, and I have one of them for my buddies who I think
Yes.
about a lot, who, we survived all this horrible stuff together, just for him to die by suicide. And
Yeah.
it fucking sucks. I get angry,
Yeah.
I get upset.
Yeah.
And I wish,
I
yeah,
feel bad that I catch myself getting angry at him.
I know.
I don't know
And
why I'm angry at him because I get him.
And
I get it.
I would encourage you not to beat yourself up about that, because there are
Yeah.
times where I wish, like, I absurdly want to call him and yell at him for not asking
Yes.
me for help, right?
Absolutely.
And
he would want to do the same if it were me.
Right. And I think this also goes back to something Josh was talking about when it comes to bereavement and being a survivor, and dealing with guilt. And this is I mean, this is me, like, I'm a trauma therapist, right? One of the hardest things for trauma therapists to learn is that at the end of the day, right, you can't make someone, and this is true for someone that's loved ones in addiction, right?
Yes.
If someone dies by suicide, if they overdose, at the end of the day, that's their journey that they're on, their choices that they're making, right?
Yeah.
If it's helpful for you to think about, oh, hey, I've got these new resources I wish I could have shared, that's one thing, that's okay, right? But there is there's danger to you in beating yourself up and feeling guilty that you were able to save, quote unquote, save somebody else, right? And that is one thing I always want to encourage, no matter what it is, when there's loss of life, be wary of your own mental health.
Absolutely.
As for services, I'm going to put my contact information here too, just in case anyone wants to reach out and get more info. I can send that to the Discord chat too. But VA services are, I believe, with the Compact Act that was recently passed, mental health services through the VA are free for service members, as long as they served, I want to say, like 30 days.
I wish I would have served, but I did not.
what I can do, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll put my email in, and if you want to reach out to me via email, I bet that I can help you find some resources that are local to you.
I appreciate that. Yes,
that's no problem.
I can put my email in. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll throw mine in.
As soon as I hit done speaking, I'll throw my email in there.
Sure.
All right. Well, I said that I was. Did you have anything more, Leah?
No, I just want to thank you all very much, because your meetings have helped me greatly.
Thank you for
the biggest ways.
Thank you for the courage to come out and speak. Your words will help others as well.
Thank you. I'll be back.
Excellent. I said I was going to cut it off, but I'm a sucker for hands.
Me too. I'm here. Let's do it.
I got one more hand up, and so I'm going to go to Andrew, and then we got to wrap up.
I'm so sorry to bring us over time.
No, you're good, man. You're good.
Oh man, you got the squat rack set up back there, man.
Oh yeah, man. I'm in my little garage gym here. The wife's putting the kids to bed.
Yeah.
But so I'm Andrew. I've been to several of these meetings, but this is the first time I've shared, so I'm probably a new face to everybody here. But I really just wanted the chance to thank you face to face, Justin, for all the information you've shared. I'm currently serving as well, and in the Army. And one thing you said that really resonated with me was like that there's this false idea that, if someone's going to kill themselves, they're going to do it, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm sure just like you, well, you already said that this was true, but I've had friends commit suicide or die by suicide.
Mhm.
Um, and when that happens in the Army, I think units kind of go into crisis mode, operations kind of shut down. There's a lot of group discussions, and I think their intentions are always well, but sometimes it can feel like we're just going through the motions. Commands are trying to cover their ass. And something that's always said in these group discussions is that false idea that, and sometimes people are just going to do it and there's nothing you can do about it. And no one ever really counters that idea. Everyone just kind of accepts that. And there's kind of just this feeling of hopelessness
Wow.
and everyone just believes it. Like, okay, well, I guess, this sucks, but it's going to keep happening and there's nothing we can do about it. So I just really wanted to thank you for offering that counterpoint. That's really powerful, and that's something I'm gonna use. I'm gonna bring it up. Next time I'm in that situation. So thank you.
And that takes so much courage to say. I mean, I remember, and I know you know this, and then the other gentleman, Alex, I think his name was, talking about how difficult it is when you're in the military to even begin talking about mental health, right? I remember I went to behavioral health one time after my first deployment, and promised it was confidential. My platoon sergeant knew about it.
Oh,
right?
shit.
So the very first thing I got was, why the fuck are you going to mental health? Something wrong with you? You know what I mean?
Wow.
Which the correct answer was, yes, actually, there's something wrong with all of us. We should all be going to mental health because we just came back from a deployment, right? But, and the same thing, like when it comes to these, when there's a crisis, when someone dies in a unit, it's very much this either finger pointing or throwing up your hands, and that element of hopelessness. I think, Andrew, that's a great word for it, because you feel hopeless. Sometimes the narratives and the stories around suicide, right? Because we all tell stories about tragedy, right? The narratives and the stories around suicide they're not life affirming, they're not true. And rather than inspire us as a community to kind of come together and check on each other, it can actually cause isolation, where we feel like there's nothing anyone can do. And what happens when it's me? What if it's my turn next? Right? We can inadvertently turn suicide into this kind of boogeyman, right? Rather than what it is, right? Which is a symptom, right? A symptom of mental illness. It is a symptom of a system failure, whether that's someone that's losing their job, losing a marriage, that kind of thing, right? And ultimately, as crazy it is to say, nowhere near as powerful as the drive to live, nowhere near as powerful as even a weak community, right? Like, there is so much evidence to show that even a dysfunctional, messed up community, right, that's got its own problems, right, is still an anchor of hope and a safety factor against suicide, right? So yeah, and again, I put my email in the chat, and I'll make sure that gets distributed elsewhere. If anyone here, if you're active duty, if you're a veteran, even if you're not, because I work on the civilian side for a long time, if anyone is curious about any other resources, I have one other thing I want to share really quick.
Yeah.
I always like to do the ask. You know what I mean? This is a free training that anyone can do. This is VA Save training. It's about 30 minutes long. It was created, right, for use with veterans, but it really applies to anyone that you are worried about. This is like mental health first aid training, right? What do you do? The steps that you can take, evidence-based stuff, right? I encourage, to me, this is kind of like, like everyone should know CPR and the Heimlich maneuver. Everyone should know this training right here. So if you are like, yeah, I want to know how to maybe self-rescue, I want to know how to work with someone else or help somebody else, maybe one day, you never know, right? It's just a friend out of the blue that really needs that. This is a training right here you can do. It's completely free, and we highly recommend it.
And by the way, speaking of the strength of this community, as I'm looking at my computer where I have the Zoom, I also have my phone kind of propped up on its charger. And
Yeah.
as soon as you mentioned the save training, it went up in the Discord. So
Fantastic.
you know, and I believe it was Raz that did that for us in the Discord. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Andrew, thank you for speaking.
Thank
I
you. Yeah.
really appreciate your words. Thank you for your service. I know it sounds like a cliche, and when you say it, when you say the same words over and over again, they might tend to lose their meanings, but it's truly, truly heartfelt. And I think I can speak for everybody here when I say thank you for your service. And we truly, truly appreciate you, not only your service, but coming here and then having what it takes to talk and elicit some of this information that I think will help a lot of people.
Yeah, I really appreciate the support of this community. You know, I love this community. It's great.
We love it. All right. So we're at the end of our time. So let me do a couple of things in the end. First, I want to thank all the core member teams that help us put everything together. You know, I'm 56 years old. I don't really know Discord very well, but our people on the back end know it really well, and have a wonderful community there. And of course, people like Devin and everybody else that's always on top of things. Dr. Kimberly Johnson, who's a big part of what we do, just did a huge mailing thing for us, and we've got a lot of things going on, and it's always, always better when we have a team. I want to thank Josh for always taking the time to do these, and to make sure that these resources and this community has a face to it, right? It's one thing about have a community, but have a community that has a face to it, I think is really valuable. And so I'm going to leave the last words for Josh. And Josh, do you have any last things for Justin or comments to make?
Well, only that, this was as advertised. I kind of came into this hoping to learn, which is true of every meeting. But Justin, that was really terrific. I think, and you've mentioned this a few times, there's enough parallels with real life and service life that we can all speak and we can all share. And there's a lot that we can throw between each other. And I just feel like, to be perfectly honest, you guys, I'm reminded of the last kind of chunk of my life's been charmed. I didn't know what 988 was, if you can believe that. But I'm also the same kid that, at 14 years old was rifling through the yellow pages, calling mental health places, asking them to help me. And I was, I'm not afraid to say this, especially to you guys, but there have been a few times in my life that I was bona fide suicidal. Beyond just the drugs. And I feel like I've really I just learned a lot. I think, Justin, you're going to have to come back and speak again, maybe a few more times, if you're into it. I really took a lot from that. I don't even want to get into it because we'll be on here for hours.
Sure.
But I just have so many thoughts and feelings. But the most important that a lot to chew on, a lot to think about, a lot to that pertains to my own life and my own journey and my own health. I don't know if Lee or Leah, is it Leah, is still on here, but to those of us who've lost people there, and my friend Carly, who she had written about the frustration and the anger. I think maybe that's something we can dive into more next time about being survivors. Everybody here in this group is a survivor in some way, right? We're all survivors. And, I think most of us have lost people, and kind of learning about and talking about the tools to help save people, I think, is probably the most important thing. But Leah, I wanted to say, and Carly, if you're still in here, I've found, I've lost a plethora of friends. There is a survivor's guilt. I don't know if I've landed on this, but I try to live a life that I'm proud of in honor of those people that are gone. And we're talking about some real guilt shit on my end. I've brought this up. It's not easy to talk about, but I have friends that are gone that last time I said this in a public way, it was ill. I talked about how my friend Corey that's dead. It is hard to say. I just said it's not hard to say.
Yeah.
I'm the one who showed him how to shoot dope, right? I'm who showed him how to do that. Was I thinking in my head, don't invite him into this hell? No, I would constantly shoot him up, and he asked me how, and I'm the guy facilitating the way that he met his end. And there is so much shame, deep shame and guilt. And I said that in one of these meetings, and there was a mutual friend in here who called me and said, I didn't know that. I didn't want to know that. And to be perfectly honest, we haven't spoken since. So I have a lot of anger and kind of things that wrap up into self-worth that come along with the feelings of the trauma of losing someone to whether it be suicide or drugs. But like I'm just going to go on and on and on. Justin, thank you so much. I know there's a lot more that I could learn from you, and I hope you'll come back and speak more. Sorry if that's muddled at the end. I have a lot going on in my mind. Sometimes it's hard to make sense of all of it. But yeah, Justin, appreciate you, your service, your energy here. And thank you so much for taking the time. This was a really fantastic meeting. And thank you to everybody who shared. And as usual, after a DSC meeting, I've got a lot to contemplate and a lot to think about. And I could never properly articulate how thankful I am for you guys. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and one last thank you to Justin. It's funny Josh mentioned about having you back, and I certainly am agreeing with that. Whenever I'm in a meeting like this and I hear people talk about different things, ideas will spark. I think I want to do a whole meeting about therapeutic gaming. I think that was a fascinating topic that I think we could explore.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I think people in this community would kind of be into that. I've never thought about it.
Are you saying there's an overlap between Coheed fans and nerds? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
No way.
And I've seen a couple of comments from people here tonight, and I see a number of names that are unfamiliar to me as somebody that's been here for all but one of meeting. Thank you, Devin, for covering me last time. And I love the fact that we have more and more new people coming. And I would, if I'm going to challenge anybody tonight, I'm going to challenge everybody that when you come back for the February meeting, bring a friend. That, find a way to help increase the exposure. And it really helps and makes a difference. So with that, I'm going to say good night. Thank you to everybody who came, to everybody who spoke, to everybody that's here new, for everybody that's served. Thank you to Justin. Thank you to Josh. I love you all. Josh, you're my brother. I love you, and I will see you soon.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Peace, y'all.
We'll see you guys. Thank you.
Good night.
Later.